Hello, my name is Everix Mahan, and this presentation will examine Crooked Parts by Azure D. Osborne-Lee through the lens of Black and Indigenous rhetoric. I think this play is ideal as an example of these types of rhetoric because it moves fluidly between past and present to create meaning and explores some intersectional ideas in how its protagonist, Freddie, interacts with his family and the world at large as a Black transgender man. I believe that the somewhat atemporal structure is a clear reflection of remixing as an essential element of Black rhetoric, and we can also apply Gloria Anzaldua's concept of the mestiza and what we've learned about visual rhetoric to gain a greater understanding of Osborne-Lee's work. This presentation will contain discussions about transphobia and racism. Before we begin our analysis of Crooked Parts, we should understand the playwright and what the play itself is about. So, Azure D. Osborne-Lee is a Black, queer, and transgender actor, screenwriter, and playwright from the South. He uses he/they pronouns. In terms of education, they hold a Bachelor's of Arts in English and Spanish through the University of Texas at Austin, a Master of Arts in Women's and Gender Studies from UT Austin, and Advanced Theater Practice from the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama in London, and a certificate in screenwriting from the New School in New York. His MA in Women's and Gender Studies is especially interesting to note because his focus was Black women's hair care and aesthetics in the 21st century, and hair plays an essential role in Crooked Parts. Currently, he is pursuing a PhD in archiving for disability dance and access aesthetics through Royal Central as well. He is currently a lecturer at the New School. Osborne-Lee has also held several prestigious fellowships and has won several play contests. As an actor, they collaborated with the likes of Sharon Bridgeforth, who is an esteemed Black queer scholar and playwright, well known for ritual jazz works, often revolving around Black collective memory and grief. Crooked Parts was one of his most successful critically plays, but he is also well known for his plays Mirrors and Red Rainbow, and his commissioned short film Sundown Support. Crooked Parts was published in the Methuen Drama Book of Trans Plays, one of my personal favorite script anthologies, and went through 4 readings and a workshop before being produced professionally at the 4th Annual Obsidian Theater Festival in 2024. Because this is a more obscure show, I haven't been able to find many pictures of it, unfortunately, so please forgive the sparseness of actual production photos. It follows the stories of Freddie, a Black queer trans man in his 30s returning to his childhood home in Texas after his fiancée breaks up with him, and Winifred, Freddie's younger self, trying to balance her relationship with her mother and the expectations of the other kids at school. These 2 storylines have alternating scenes in the script, so they progress simultaneously. And for the purpose of this discussion, I'll be referring to Freddie's younger self using the name Winifred and she/her pronouns for the sake of clarity and preserving how she presents in the script. So in 1995, Winifred and her mother, Angela, have a ritual of Angela doing Winifred's hair every Sunday, as we can see in this picture from the Obsidian Theater Festival. Winifred is made fun of by the other kids at school, and her insecurities and social pressure physically manifest as a sentient, ever-growing mass of hair, extensions, t-shirts, and magazine clippings that becomes grotesquely animated as she grapples with the relationship with her hair and with her mother. I haven't actually been able to find any good pictures of this, which is unfortunate because it's a little hard to conceptualize without seeing it. We'll see a picture of it near the end of the presentation, though. Winifred convinces Angela to let her get a relaxer, which drives a wedge between them. And though Winifred is struggling to take care of her hair, Angela tells her she's old enough to take care of it herself, leading to further emotional separation. Winifred is still bullied by the other students, and when she finally starts to make friends, the family has to move due to poor infrastructure in the neighborhood and the house burning down when she tries to burn items representing her insecurities. In the process, her hair catches on fire too. In 2013, Freddie returns to his childhood home and is greeted by his brother Stephen, who has recently returned from incarceration. Stephen and their father Michael are mostly supportive of Freddie's transition, but they're not perfect about it. Angela, however, is determined to avoid even looking at Freddie, possibly believing that his transition is just an extension of his childhood insecurities. Freddie, now a writer, is trying to move to New Orleans but has to rely on his parents for money after moving several times and separating from his fiancée. Stephen, too, struggles financially and lives at home due to addiction, exploitative employers, and issues finding an apartment that doesn't care about his criminal record. Both dream of being free from societal expectations surrounding their past, especially influenced by their mother putting pressure on both of them to be perfect. After getting into a fight over Angela's transphobic comments at a family dinner, Freddie leaves the house and finds out a few hours later that his brother is in jail again. Winifred and Freddie meet in a liminal space where they encourage each other to embrace their true selves. And finally, Freddie returns to his house where Angela asks Freddie to help her with her hair, and Freddie gifts her a mixtape, saying that despite Angela assuming that he didn't want her to talk with him, he wants to rekindle their relationship. Now that we have a clear general understanding of what crooked parts is, we can explore our Black and Indigenous rhetorical concepts. Theater as a practice is a multimodal art form in which many elements and mediums like visual art, music, gestures, and speech are shaped into broader systems of meaning through design and directorial work, creating the modes that interact to create meaning. Since theater is very different depending on the audience, we can clearly see how these systems and modes shift and are refined by many different people over time to respond to the needs of the audience's communities. Sometimes these needs are met cross-culturally, too, and theater as a whole is designed to cater to both experiences deemed as universal and those that are extremely specific. So, for example, Crooked Parts speaks to both the universal human experience of struggling to find yourself amid other people's expectations of you, and the very specific experiences of a middle-aged Black trans person navigating a complicated family relationship, as we can see in this photo of Angela and Freddie, or a teenage Black girl grappling with the social expectations surrounding her hair. We can analyze one of these modes more closely through the visual rhetoric used in Crooked Parts. For a specific example, we can look at the sentient hairball following Winifred around because it is a completely silent aspect of the show, only visually seen and almost easy to forget about when you're just reading the script. Since it kind of takes on a character of its own, we can look at it as body rhetoric, a type of visual rhetoric that is especially common in theater. Two components of visual rhetoric, as we've discussed them in class, are presentational symbolism and presence. So the hairball certainly fits both of these. As Luke has explained in his slides, presentational symbolism is the use of symbols or imagery to attempt physicality, and presence involves a sort of pre-verbal impact that can't be achieved with language. The hairball visually indicates Winifred's insecurities over her appearance as a young Black girl, growing as her resentment toward her own appearance and Angela's emotional distance grows too. It also fits with Reiger's visual grammar. It brings people in by intriguing them, enhances the audience's understanding of Winifred's internal struggle, advances the narrative of the text by forcing Winifred to confront that struggle head on, and provides both consistency in meaning and variety in the delivery of said meaning. Through the work of props managers or puppeteers, design and performance work, the appearance of it would be heavily curated and purposeful, and use color and composition to communicate the messiness of Winifred's emotions. As Dr. Marquise Bay of Northwestern University explains in their introduction to Crooked Parts in the Methuen Drama Book of Trans Plays, the body is the site of gendered expectations, assumptions, violence, joy, and recognition. And even in the hairball's case, this is true. We can view the atemporal nature of Crooked Parts as its own type of remixing, combining both back-in-the-day narrative and the uncertainty and turbulence of the present to create a bigger picture for the audience. In Digital Griots, Dr. Adam J. Banks of Stanford University describes remixing as a practice that refocuses the audience on the original text with new version of the meaning superimposed upon it. We can see this in the way that the past and memories are re-examined in hindsight in Crooked Parts. Osborne-Lee makes generational tensions quite clear between Angela and Freddie because the past storyline functions as its own back-in-the-day narrative, a living remix that we superimpose our understanding of Freddie as an adult onto. Banks explains that these narratives exemplify the growing tensions between young people and elders, in which those two groups talk about each other and about the distance between them, but not to each other. Throughout Crooked Parts, we witness Freddie and Angela talk about their problems with Steven and Michael, but not to each other often, making these tensions quite clear to the audience. Still, Osborne-Lee's work can be regarded as a practice in futurism, showing that Freddie and Angela were close once, and therefore implying that they could be again when they connect through their previously shared experience with hair. We can even see what Banks describes as synchronizing generational commonalities via identification between older and newer gens, when Freddie gives Angela a mixtape of the songs they used to listen to together. I think the making of Crooked Parts also indicates what Banks articulates as young people having little interest in the history elders describe when this history is only used to minimize them. I think this idea is highly reflected in the way that people talk about trans people, using their history of a lived experience as a different gender to minimize them. So, younger trans people often assert the born in the wrong body narrative, where the person didn't truly experience life as another gender, but simply experienced a mistake. I'm sure that some elder trans people do feel like that, but I think that the prevalence in this complete rejection of a birth gender is because cis people, especially older cis people, use that history as a weapon. Finally, though Gloria Anzaldúa is not a black scholar, she is a lesbian woman of color, and we can still apply her concept of the mestiza to Freddie's experience as a black queer trans person. As Anzaldúa explains, the mestiza has a complex emotional experience involving embracing ambiguity and contradictions as a result of clashing social and cultural expectations imparted on them. Anzaldúa explains, the answer to the problem between the white race and the colored, between males and females, lies in healing the split that originates in the very foundation of our lives, our culture, our languages, our thoughts. In short, the complex liminal experiences of people with intersecting non-Eurocentric identities must be communicated for the sake of healing and understanding. Freddie, too, has a complex, unique experience due to his intersecting cultural experiences and intersecting cultural identities affecting his perception of his family and himself. Throughout the show, Freddie experiences concepts that align with the idea of Nepantla as well, where you have to speak yourself into existence in order to survive. First, we can see the trapped soul. Freddie understands that his sense of self is broken because he was forced to think his identity as a black girl had to align with white ideals. Next, we can observe listening through memory, or listening for memory, where Freddie remembers his past self and reframes her, understanding that his mother was not the problem, but the ideals of Eurocentric beauty standards and white society, illustrated by the hairball, which we can see Freddie holding here. Finally, we can see the imperative, reassembling the self through narrative. I believe that this is reflected through Freddie talking to Winifred and moving forward, and also the existence of the show itself, considering Crooked Parts has generally been seen as semi-autobiographical. Crooked Parts helps us better understand the fragmented sense of self that white society forces upon people of color, and how understanding and healing these rifts is the only way to move forward. Through these rhetorical strategies, we can clearly see the influences of Black and Indigenous rhetoric on Osborne-Lee, whether intentional or unintentional. This only emphasizes the damaging nature of white supremacy and its following ciscentricity on trans and queer people of color, leading the audience to understand that healing is possible and necessary, but only through understanding the painful and complex history that came before it.